Welcome to the Traitors, a Traitors podcast. My name is David Bloomberg, and I'm your host for Season 1 of the Traitors Canada. The Traitors features deep dives into every episode of the multi-award-winning hit TV competition show, The Traitors, as well as interviews with contestants from the shows. Today, we're talking about the Traitors Canada Episode 6, and I have an amazing guest as I welcome the queen and fan favorite of Traitors Australia Season 2, Annabelle.
Oh my God, David! I am a true fan of yours, and I'm so stoked to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm a fan of yours as well. Notice how I introduced her. There's no other name necessary. It's like Madonna or Sting. It's just Annabelle.
Thank you, because I really haven't decided how I'm branding my surname.
I'm telling you, just go with one name.
I love it.
So before we jump in, I just wanted to ask you, how have you been enjoying the Traitors Canada up till this episode?
I am literally obsessed with this cast. I don't know if it's because I've been talking about them obsessively, but they're bringing so much. I feel like we're getting the drama, the fallouts, the tears of the Traitors UK, but with a lot more strategy. And so combined, it's really ticking all of the boxes for me. This episode, I did have to take a moment, a walk around the block. I felt personally attacked, but I still had a really good time.
Well, good. Yeah. And one thing that you didn't mention is it also has a couple of faithful who maybe remind me of some faithfuls from your season, because they're literally never right.
All I'm saying is, David, icons only at banishment number 5.
All right. Well, before we get to the meat of the episode, we have some TT news. First, more awards news for the Traitors UK. The show has been nominated in the entertainment category for the 2023 Televisual Bulldog Awards. It faces tough competition from 7 other nominees, including Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway, Strictly Come Dancing, and The Masked Singer. I've actually heard of one of those since they're all British shows, and The winner will be announced in the winter issue of Televisual magazine. Additionally, in the past couple days, the show has been shortlisted at the TV Choice Awards in the Best Reality Show category. This time there are only 3 other nominees: Queer Eye, At Home with the Furies, and I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. You can vote for the Traitors by visiting tvchoicemagazine.co.uk. Next up, some more pretty exciting news from the UK. The BBC and Studio Lambert have announced a 3rd season of The Traitors UK has already been commissioned, and casting is now open. This is a very promising sign and suggests that the forthcoming season 2 is another great one. The growing list of awards the first season is accumulating probably isn't hurting either. If you want to apply to be a cast member, and yes, this means that the UK show is not casting celebrities, you can visit the BBC website or the link on Studio Lambert's social media pages. Matthew will also add the link to the podcast episode description. I also want to add that while it hasn't been confirmed, rumors are that the US version is also going to be renewed for a 3rd season, which would make sense since the US and UK versions are made in cooperation. With that, let's set up the Traitor game. This is where we will each lie to one another once during the podcast. The lie can be big or small about the Traitors, yourself, or anything else, as long as it is a complete fabrication. However, we are looking for fake facts, not fake opinions. Like, I can't say, I loved the way Sam played the traitor role in your season, which would be an obvious lie to you anyway. As I've mentioned previously, any lie involving numbers needs to be like an order of magnitude. Like, I can't say I have 9 pages of notes when I actually have 8. I'd need to say I have 80 pages, which would be a lot, even for this episode. And then at the end of the episode, we will put our traitor hunting skills to the test and see if we can detect the other person's lie. Are you ready to betray me?
Oh, David, I'm so poised and ready. I mean, did I say this last time I was on the podcast to Matthew and then swept up in my own grandiose story, completely forgot to tell any lies at all, freaked out and couldn't even think of Matthew's? Yes, but I'm here and I'm ready for redemption.
All right. Well, in that case, our game begins now. Now, normally we'd begin the recap where the show does, but there is such a holy shit moment in this episode that I think we have to jump right to it. Just before the mission, Corrine gathers everybody in the room to tell them Dom has broken a rule last night in his room and as such has been removed from the game. At first, I think at least some of the players definitely thought this was like part of the mission. Like, oh, Dom has been removed and you have to go find him. And then when she said it, they were like, wait, you're serious? You know, I couldn't tell exactly whose voice it was. I think it was May's, but I'm not 100% who was saying that, like, oh, you're serious? So what do you think happened?
I'm less interested in what really happened and more of the deeply salacious explanations I've been thinking of in my head. I mean, realistically, maybe he had a phone or was using a smart TV to communicate with people. But Dom, alone in his room at night, what could he possibly have been up to? I don't think it could have been communicating with the other contestants either, or we would have seen more people punished. But I feel like something as small as scribbling notes somewhere secret. I know so many people have done that and got less than a slap on the wrist. So I think, David, it must have been fairly egregious, and my mind wants to go to dark places.
Oh, my. Well, my mind may have gone to dark places, but that's not where I settled. I settled on one of the things you mentioned because I have seen over the course of my many years of watching and covering reality TV several cases of players in games sneaking cell phones in. So that's where I immediately went to. Like maybe he had a burner phone and just called home to talk to relatives or something like that. A now very famous comedian did it, and to show how long ago that was, he had a BlackBerry. It was in 2006 on Last Comic Standing. He said he was just concerned about his girlfriend because she had just had a recent breast augmentation surgery. Then in American Idol season 9, semifinalist Joanna Pacitti was also disqualified because she had a cell phone and was in contact with people to get outside help. And then much more recently, we saw Chuck Norris's grandson kicked off of the first claim to fame's, and for having a cell phone and trying to use it in a room full of cameras.
That was the incident that came straight to my mind, David. That was so funny. But yes, I agree with you. Sneaky call home to the girlfriend, Dom. I see you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, these rooms are not outfitted with cameras the way like claim to fame was. So I don't know. Corrine said, even when I'm not watching you, I'm watching you, basically. So who knows? Someone may have heard him talking or, yeah. So,
I'm
yeah,
sure. I'm sure.
obviously, I don't think that they're going to have him doing interviews. And I think that it will probably stay secret for a while.
I suspect so. I mean, Dom, our one confessional count king.
Mm-hmm.
How we will miss you.
We'll talk about, I was going to say just when he was getting somewhere. But with that, we'll go back to our usual chronological order. So we will be mentioning Dom for a while along the way. We begin episode 6 where episode 5 left off with a knock at the Traitor Tower door. And of course, it's Corrine, and she's telling them exactly what I predicted last week. There is no murder, but rather Mike and Kuzi have to put 3 players on death row and then murder one of them the following night. I was also right that Kuzi would have wanted to recruit a scapegoat, so she's annoyed about that. And I am too, because quite frankly, I think that would have been more fun.
Yeah, I think this was a huge miss, not to have recruited now the previous episode, because with the result we see that we will get to, if Kevin goes out and he is a traitor, that completely takes the heat off Cuzzy. That's the reality star knocked out. That's the person from that original aeroplane challenge team out. It really, I don't know about you, David. I was catching up on a couple of the episodes that you've done just to get a gauge for your opinions, and I think you've been quite high on Cuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, these have been really messy traitors. Just their decisions with who they're murdering.
I mean, that says a lot considering who the traitors were in your season.
Well, I think it's because I had higher standards for these guys, you know? I thought, Mike, Cuzzy, you aren't egomaniacs. You're playing with other intelligent people and just really going against the grain. The shield strategy is a strategy for a reason.
Yes.
And to immediately choose to murder someone who should have by proxy shield protection because you as a traitor have it, always going to come back to bite her.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, as you've heard, I've been iffy on that the whole time. I don't think they should have done it, but if they were going to do it, doing it that early when there was enough numbers. But the problem is, see, I think this is a problem that we've seen with these traitors, is they assume that the faithful are going to somehow come to the same conclusion they did. Like, I'm sure that Mike and Kuzi were like, well, they'll probably realize that there was enough numbers there, so it didn't matter. But you can't explain that without looking suspicious. Like you can't go in and say, well, I bet they did it for this reason, because then people are looking at you like, and how do you know what's in the mind of a traitor?
Absolutely. I thought it was bad in 2 ways. Either it means that the traitor had a shield and the traitor's definitely there, or it means that Crystal was so worth murdering that the traitors, not even knowing who had the shield, were willing to take the shot because Crystal was totally accurate. And who was she pointing out? Cuzzy and Mike. So
right.
I thought it was probably the most satisfying aspect of this episode is seeing that now rebound on them. And I also think that it was a strategic error on both of their parts not to recruit Kevin as he was gaining heat, because that looked good for both of them. We needed a man gone to clear the heat on Mike. We needed a reality star gone to clear it on Cuzzy. He was always half out the door. I think that should have happened last episode too.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever would have recruited Kevin, because I would be too afraid that Kevin would turn on me very quickly and that he would have the ability to do it. If I were looking for a reality star, I might have recruited Fierce. Because clicks lots of the boxes there and going so crazy probably out the door. May was another possibility, obviously, woman instead, but does click the reality star box and, always, perpetually wrong. So that also helped. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying about Kevin with, the heat that he was under, although I don't think he was under as much heat because he led the charge against Melissa B.
Yeah.
As we saw her celebrating on Twitter after this episode. Yeah. So I don't know. It would scare me if I were a traitor. It would scare me to recruit him.
I agree. I think I agree with you to the extent that Kevin would now know exactly who the traitors were, and he totally could pull something. But I also think Kevin is the only person you mentioned out of those names who had the ability to pull off being a day one traitor. I think if
True.
you recruit May, if you recruit Mickey, if you recruit Fierce,
I
you're going to
forgot
see
about Mickey. I always forget about Mickey on this show. So
instant change in behavior. So I think he's the only one who could have taken the heat off. You're right, it's a huge risk, and maybe it'll still work out for them, but I still think it's something worth considering.
yeah. I mean, that's all in the past now for them, but that's what we do on podcasts is we analyze what people should have done. So in any case, going back to Traitors Tower here, Kuzi figures the faithful will expect the traitors to include one of themselves among the death row list, which does make sense because I'm pretty sure that's literally always happened in every season so far. She thinks people will become suspicious of all three names, so they go through the names they've either heard or they want out, focusing on Mary because she's recently been named as a possible traitor, Kevin because he's a threat, and then Melissa because she'll defend herself a lot and take up all the discussion time, which I didn't realize just how much she talks, but in this episode, they make it sound like she just talks all the time.
We did see earlier in that same fateful air landing strip challenge her screaming over the top of May, which caused some drama. Melee, you know what, girlie? When you're as interesting as you, keep that mouth open.
That's right. So we get a breakfast and people start trailing in. Within the first two groups are Trevon, Gurleen, Mickey, Melissa, Donna, and Mike. And Donna says they need to be detectives, and she thinks she's found two traitors. But we don't hear who they are yet. Mary, Dom, and Kevin are next as Kevin realizes that Kuzi and Leroy aren't there yet, and both of them are his allies. It's so funny how Kevin talked all last week about his plan to align with a traitor when he's already been aligned with a traitor since day one, and he just didn't realize it.
Absolutely. He's core to the traitor's pet strategy is working out fairly early which one of your allies is the traitor. And he's missed the mark on that one. But as we'll get to later, the second part of the traitor's pet strategy, you need to be a good little dog. Woof, woof.
Yes.
You don't bite the hand that feeds.
Yes. Mike announces that for the first time, he has a theory. Thanks, Mike. And it goes back to the other team from the airport a couple episodes back. Now this, based on what you were just saying, I know that, and we're going to get to it here, that other people are going to bring the airport up too. Why is he bringing the airport up? It's a bad idea for him to bring that mission up unless, again, he's doing exactly what he was accused of doing previously, which was hearing whispers of things and then presenting it as his own idea.
That's exactly what he's doing, David. This is not a new or fresh idea. Every single episode since that mission, people have been throwing that out as an idea. Even May has been continuously pushing this as an idea. So I'm sorry, Mike. This is not fresh ideas.
Yes, and speaking of May, she arrives alone, and discussions about the shield ensue, which reminds me that I guess winning the shield last week was meaningless because there was no murder, unless it protected them from being on death row too, and they just didn't bother to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd need to go back and have a little look at those notes, but it doesn't seem like it had a huge impact. I mean, Mickey had the shield.
So Leroy comes in and they presume Kuzi is out until she comes into a big celebration. Yay, you're all alive. And all of that, of course, is cut short by Karine walking in with the actual news of what happened, which was death row. Kevin says the odds of him getting murdered have gone up 1,000,000%. Now, since he's a poker player, I usually trust his math. I'm pretty sure that going up 1,000,000% is not correct, though.
But we love the drama anyway. What I do appreciate from Kevin is the articulation of the idea that
Mm-hmm.
you, as a faithful, need to balance being suspicious enough to avoid murder, but supported enough to avoid banishment. And this is something that's intuitive for us as podcasters and people who love competition strategy. But you would be surprised how alien that
Mm-hmm.
concept is to people who were playing the game. And I do think that this is kind of a big disadvantage for Kevin. I think as someone who is so obviously more strategic with much higher game intelligence than everyone, not only does that make him seem more threatening in an obvious
Mm-hmm.
sense, but people perceive that as him being suspicious and threatening in some other way. And this is something that I struggled with as well, where you just seem sus or something's not right with her. And people miss that them being intimidated by you as a player, they misinterpret that as them being intimidated by you as a potential murderer.
Yeah, I would correct one small thing of what you said. I don't think him having the knowledge is what does it. I think him showing the knowledge. If he had that knowledge and he just told us, we'd be fine. But he's out there telling everyone, and we'll get to that at the round table because that didn't go so hot. But I think that's what it is. And yes, he is great. I mean, he's been on Big Brother twice, so he knows how to talk to the cameras, how to explain himself, and he does a great job. He is, to my mind, the first person to go in there and explain to us all these different things. Other people may have been doing it. I think you were doing it, as a matter of fact, but he had more time and, camera time to explain what was going on specifically. And yeah, definitely most people who go in there, I mean, your whole cast mostly, they had no idea. And I think a lot of the people even on this cast had no idea about the real way to play, which again, we'll talk about more when we get to the round table. But yeah, Kevin, he just it reminds me, and this is a very miniature version of it. There was a podcaster mafia game. This was on a video. So there was a podcaster mafia game that I was in, and someone said something, and then I immediately, without even thinking about it, jumped into analysis mode, and I was like, "Well, no, that doesn't make sense." And I was basically podcasting the mafia game. And I was like pod-splaining it to them. And so then her co-host from one of the podcasts they do immediately jumps on me. And then I get, knocked out in that very round. I get voted out. And so, yeah, it's, like I said, a very small version of that is when you go into that mode, people look at you and they're like, ooh, that's awful suspicious that you're behaving that way.
Yeah. When you know it all, David, when you're that correct, it's very hard to pretend that you're wrong and not that intelligent.
Yes.
So I don't
Yes.
I don't blame Kevin for it. And back to what you said about him being able to articulate this strategy, I think you're totally right. And something I've really appreciated about Traitors Canada, as opposed to the other versions, they're not afraid to show and talk about the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the other versions have been very adverse to showcasing the player's strategy because they want to keep it as this, we're just trying to hunt the murderers
Right.
Narrative. The way Canada has exposed the fact that, yeah, of course there's alliances, of course there's decision factors that come in other than, I think you're a traitor when you banish someone. Canada has not been afraid to talk about that. And I think that is what's making this a top tier season.
Yes, I totally agree. Although, let's face it, in your season, if they had talked to most of the faithfuls and asked them what their strategy was, it would have been dead air. So,
I'm sorry, my season ended after 5 episodes.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. It was the shortest Traitors season ever. Um, all right, well, getting back here, Donna expands on her earlier statement and says she feels like she has to go into strategy mode. So she says this again. So welcome to the game, Donna. She had all those from the airport mission who went into the armory raise their hands. And then Dom jumps on this and says a traitor got a shield, and that's why they felt comfortable targeting someone from that group. Now, I've discussed, on previous podcasts that, well, basically what we just said. He's not wrong, but there were also enough people that it wasn't a big risk. But again, then you have to explain that because it's clearly a risk in terms of what the faithful would think. So I was going to ask you about your thoughts on that, but you've already told me, so we can just keep going, I think.
What I liked about this point, though, I will say, because we get this great confessional from Kevin that's essentially like, well, nice to meet you, Dom.
Yeah.
You can tell at this point in the game, they're getting over each other. We're starting to see more of this sass and confessionals where they're like, yeah, all right, mate. And I love that. It's giving Traitors UK. I'm living for it.
All right. Well, Kuzi is also getting stressed as Dom continues by eliminating people who are out of the game. She tells us Dom is barking up the wrong tree. It's actually the right tree. She just doesn't like the tree that he's barking up. But then Dom switches to actually barking up the wrong tree and concludes that the traitor in question put themselves on death row to avoid suspicion. So that makes Kevin his top suspect. So Kuzi managed to send him off to the other tree there.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, exactly. See, Kevin thinks about that. Most people would be like, oh, now I'm getting worried. Kevin's like, oh, this heat's going to keep me safe with the traitors. And this is not 2020 hindsight. This is the note I wrote at the time. I was like, I don't think they're the ones you need to worry about right now, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Kevin.
Yes. And then he also doesn't help his cause with the traitors by outright telling Mike again that he's suspicious. So, although I guess if you're going to do it, stay focused on one person instead of like spreading it around like he does later.
And confronting other people outside your alliance is dangerous. We did see at the start of this episode, Kuzi, and throughout this episode, Kuzi is prepared to go into bat for Kevin. Mike is pushing. We need to go for Kevin. We need to put him up on trial. We need to get him sooner than later. Kuzi is willing to have his back. Now, if Kevin actually just says within his alliance of Leroy, Kuzi, Gurleen, mate, I think Mike is a traitor and we need to go for Mike. Kuzi might decide she's ready for a bit of a mutiny and a backstab. Going with that information straight to Mike, that's where it's getting dangerous.
I wonder if he thinks that Mike is actually a faithful and he's trying to be purposely off the mark, because that would go along with part of what his strategy was in, he thinks Mary is a traitor, so he's getting close to her, but he's outwardly targeting Mike. So I wonder if but the reasons he gives for Mike being a traitor are so good. They're such good reads that it's like, if he really does think Mike is a faithful, then he needs to trust his own reads better.
Yeah, I think that he keeps forgetting he's supposed to be playing dumb. I think it is just sometimes hard to restrain yourself when you're in this environment. You know that you've got it and you want to. I think he's struggling on that one, to be honest.
Yeah. So death rowers, Melissa and Mary talk, and they think Kuzi is a possible traitor because she's calm and deflects questions rather than putting out names. Meanwhile, Kuzi tells us about the alliance of herself, Kevin, Leroy, and Gurleen, which I'm pretty sure is the group that Fierce said was their alliance and they kicked Kevin out of in their mind last week. So, yeah, so much for that, Fierce. Kuzi thinks there isn't suspicion of her among them, and so she doesn't want to cut anyone in her alliance, which is good. Meanwhile, another group of Mike, Dom, May, Donna, and Melissa chat. Several raise Leroy's name, and then Dom raises Kuzi's name. And then we get to the mission, or before the mission, rather, the point where Dom is booted. So, I mean, it also raises a timing question here, because I believe that each episode, at least in Traitors Canada, I'm not sure how it was for you, but I believe each episode is a day. And so, no,
I don't know. That's a lot to happen in a day, is all I'll say. Those breakfasts take a really long time to film. I know Traitors New Zealand legitimately was one day, but just with all of these things that have happened, and we've still got the mission, we've still got the armory, we've still got loads of talking post mission to go. This can't have this must have been 2 days.
Okay, well, that would explain the overnight part of it then, because otherwise it would have been more like overnight, but yet we let you sit there and talk to people, and then we later discovered it, which, you know, could go back to your idea of a note. You know, he was writing notes, and they sent the cleaning staff in, and they went, "Hey, what's this?" But yeah, it could be a number of different things there. So anyway, Kareen introduces the mission. It's kind of funny that the players have, at least from what we see, exactly 0 time to even think about Dom. Like, it's like, Dom is gone. And Kuzi's like, what happened? And Kareen's like, and now we have the mission. And boom, we're into it. And we never hear about it again. It'll be interesting to see, like, do they just take his picture down? Is it going to have an X over it? Is it just going to be scratched out? I don't know.
They're going to write shame on his forehead.
Yes. So the mission is that spirits of past players have ransacked her parlor, and they have to go on a ghost hunt, or more specifically, they have to figure out which objects have been replaced. Each is worth $1,000, and the group identifying the most objects the fastest will win. But only those on death row can get a shield, so they are the captains of the team and will automatically get it if their team wins. The teams end up as Kevin, Leroy, Donna, Gurleen, Melissa, Mickey, May, Trevon, and Mary, Mike, and Kuzi. So Mary literally has the Traitors team, and my immediate thought was those two could throw it to ensure Mary doesn't get the shield. And hey,
Absolutely.
guess what? Kuzi throws it to ensure that Mary doesn't get the shield. Mike doesn't throw it. He's totally different mindset, but
Absolutely. I screamed. I mean, honestly, what were the odds? But we kind of already know that Mike really wants to murder Kevin. And we know that Kuzi really doesn't want to murder Kevin, but also doesn't want to show her cards to Mike and reveal just how much that relationship means to her. So to me, it made sense that they would both have conflicting aims in this mission. Poor old Mary stuck in the middle.
So Kevin's team, though, gets 2 of the 3 items pretty quickly. The only one who doesn't get one is very psychic Donna. She messes up and puts the wrong item just when Gurleen was figuring out the actual 3rd item. Melissa's team gets 0 items. May says they suck. I have no further comment on that. And then we already talked about Mary's team. So Kevin is understandably excited when Kareen announces the results. And then the post-mission discussions ensue. Melissa tells Kevin she doesn't think he's a traitor at all because he talks so much. Trevon and May, the 2 wrongest people this season, have finally hit on a right answer as they bring up Kuzi and find out that others have been discussing her. So it is true. A blind squirrel does occasionally find a nut.
Thought, you know what, I've been teasing May all season as well, David. She's just so loudly wrong, and I love
not
that
as loud
for her,
as fierce, but yes.
No, and I thought that I was kind of turning around on her this episode because, in fairness, she has been articulating some correct takes. So she does really clearly understand the shield strategy, which is more than most people on my season could do. She is kind of collecting little pieces of logical evidence. She's been one of the people most determined that the traitor was definitely on that airplane team, which she's correct about. And now she's the one that's going around really pushing Kuzi's name. I thought, maybe optimistically, that Kuzi, there's a groundswell movement against her this episode, and it might have been her banished tonight. Were you fooled as well?
No, not really. I thought she was still safe. Even the previews from last week, I was poo-pooing them. And with May, the other thing, it wasn't just the number of times she's been wrong in picking people. It's the reasons that she has been wrong. It's like in the very first episode, I had high hopes for her because she was like, yes, we all have to go with the crowd, to make sure we don't stand out, even if we have different ideas in mind. And then the second episode, she was like, no, we should not go with the mob mentality. We should be out on our own, which is a terrible way to think about it. And then on top of it, she made it worse by joining a different mob. So she didn't want to be in the one mob. So she went to a different mob instead of, she said, I believe it's Rick and I'm going to vote Rick. And then she changes it to Crystal because other people said Crystal, and that's, going back several roundtables. So yeah.
The hearts and minds mob, I've been calling them, David. They're all talking about following their heart, their mind, their soul, and then immediately mob on with whoever one of the traitors suggests. Yes. So yes. I'm with you.
So May brings the idea of Kuzi to Kevin. Word makes it back to Mike, who tells Kuzi, but he thinks May is the only one bringing up her name, which of course we know is wrong. Kuzi tells us if May brings it up at the round table, she will verbally violate her in a respectful way that's so bad she never wants to do it again, which is a really, really strange phrase. It's almost like she really wanted to rip into her, but then remembered she was on camera. So then she added the whole respectful part.
I don't think I've ever been violated in a respectful way, honestly.
Yes, that's what I mean. It's like she was ripping her apart. That she was like, "Oh, I have to tone this down because this is on camera."
Love.
So then we go to Trevon. We're at the round table. We're at the round table, and Trevon opens it up by saying he's glad everyone knows he's a faithful, but Kevin still voted for him last time. And so now is when we begin the end of Kevin's game, because Kevin says he thought everyone was voting him. And if he had just stopped there, I think he would have been fine. But then he said Trevon just rubs him the wrong way. And I heard him on an interview say that's when he saw everybody's eyes turn on him. He further then, and this goes to what I was talking about earlier, tries to explain the game to Trevon, who clearly doesn't get it. It's, it's like, I don't know, trying to teach math to a squirrel or something like that. Trevon echoes all the things that I've talked about where, the host of whatever season it is comes out and says, it is the job of the faithful to get the traitors. And that's what he says. I am here to do that. I am here. No, that's not your job. Your job is to survive to the end and win the money. However you can.
I felt so triggered in this moment, David.
I bet.
This is the point when my blood started boiling, because what Kevin said makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. The odds of you successfully banishing a traitor at any given roundtable, small. Mm-hmm. And how beneficial that is to you to get it right, kind of small as well. What is always going to benefit your game is eliminating somebody who won't work with you, who you don't like, who is not going to take you to the end. Specifically, all of the reasons Kevin gave for putting Trayvon's name
Mm-hmm.
down. That is always a good move to get rid of that person.
Yes.
And because he was one of a tiny handful of people in that room who really truly understood the game and how you're supposed to play it, everyone looked at him and thought, oh, he's smarter than me. He gets this game better than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's threatening to me. And I'm going to choose to perceive that threat as him being a traitor, just like I was talking about at the start of this podcast.
Right.
And it was so distressing to watch. I was like, Kevin, I get you. You're here spitting facts, and everyone just has their hands over their ears.
Yeah. And that's where we get to what I had said earlier was it's great that he knows all that. I mean, he should, and he does. And he's very good. He's very smart. He's very strategic. You're not going to be able to educate everyone, especially Trayvon, at the round table. And especially you can't do it by saying, I don't trust you, and therefore I am not going further with you. Because then everyone, even the people who might not think he's a traitor, they look at him and say, well, can we trust him? Now, I don't know that most of them were putting that 2 and 2 together, because as it goes on, he loses the trust of several people. And I mean, Kevin was spot on. If he was commentating this, if he was podcasting about this, absolutely accurate commentary. But Trayvon doesn't know what game he's playing. This is the man who came in and lied and said he was a server instead of in PR, and then told people about the lie a little bit later. He has no clue what game he's even in. And like I said, you just can't. I'm sorry, you can't teach that squirrel how to do math. It's
You're so right. And I don't disagree with you at all. There are several places here where Kevin totally did the wrong thing, said the wrong thing. I think something about the Traitors, which is perhaps different to the other social strategy games, is the idea that every episode you are thrown into a structured conflict situation where you have to have conflict and fighting with other people. And how you handle yourself in confrontation is so, so important. And let's be honest, how many of us are as calm as Kuzi when someone's coming for our throat?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for 30 years, I worked at a job that was, had a lot of conflict involved, where I would have to have meetings with people, and I would have to tell them they were doing things wrong and they were going to have to pay a fine and all these things. And I was not that calm, or I was as calm as I needed to be, let's just say. And so often I had to play the bad guy. And so, I get it, Kevin. I totally get it. But no, this was where things went completely awry for him. Now, May jumps in on a completely different subject. So who knows? Maybe they edited things, and says she believes there are 2 traitors because no one has been recruited. She's right. I mean, this is one of those things you were talking about that, she picked up on. And the only reason they wouldn't need to recruit is if they felt comfortable. Also right. So whose name hasn't been mentioned? Kuzi, Leroy, Melissa, Gurleen. So Melissa immediately jumps on the Gurleen train. And Gurleen defends herself a bit, but May says something we've heard before, which is that some people only say names because they've already heard them. I mean, okay, but there's only so many names to go around. So, I mean, I guess it's right, but okay. Leroy says he trusts people who he believes aren't traitors, and those would be Gurleen and Kuzi. He suspects Mary. Kevin defends Mary, so he's back on his, he's back on his stay close to the person I think is the traitor thing. But, then he goes completely awry and throws out Kuzi's name as someone he suspects. And again, I'm not sure that he's doing it honestly. I think he wants to make himself look better by aiming at the people who he believes are faithful so that the real traitors won't view him as a threat. And because Kuzi's an ally, he believes Kuzi won't hold it against him.
This was the part that was really egregious to me,
Mm-hmm.
David. I understand you're in a conflict situation and you have to hold several layers in your head. I want to look stupid. I want to look loyal to my allies. I want to get the heat off me. He throws out Kuzi's name, David. He also throws out Leroy's name. That's
Yes.
half of his alliance.
Yes.
And surely if you don't forget anything else, keeping your ally's name out of your mouth at the banishment in a game that's so mistrustful and breeding paranoia, the moment you let that slip out of your mouth, you can't take it back, and you're so burning trust.
Yeah, I do wonder if maybe some of his Big Brother time has come back here, because in Big Brother, you have usually, a week between evictions. And so what gets said in those last minute conversations, the final speeches to supposedly convince people, that's all meaningless. It has all been decided long before then. And I think in Kevin's mind, it's like he said at the beginning, he said, well, I was told coming in that we were all voting Trayvon and nothing changed. I wonder if he's somewhat operating from that Big Brother way. And it's just like for Survivor, I say there are very few live tribal councils that people come in and they know what they're going to do. And even if they're pretending it's supposedly, up in the air, it's not. And we even saw that in the US this, past week, where the person who was supposed to be the target was immune. And it's not like there was some huge, oh my God, we have to run around and figure out who the next. No, they just went to the next person on the list that they had already been discussing. And
yeah,
so I think that he's playing it more like Survivor and Big Brother.
I agree, and particularly in thinking his relationships are the same. So in Survivor and Big Brother, you get a lot of time together,
right,
whereas you only get the time together that you see on screen. You're separated overnight. They're not necessarily having all of their meals
or so
together.
we believe. You're separated overnight.
Except for Dom.
Except for Dom.
And they are your relationships are quite shallow. You're getting a few hours together and you've got to split that between everyone. I was ride or dies with Luke and barely knew him by the time I went out. Our whole relationship was basically built on we've never put each other's names out. We always protect each other. And, in my mind, if I had heard any of my allies put my name out or one of my other allies' names out, that's it, we're done. We do not have enough of a bond to cement any broken trust.
Yeah, I think if he had talked to them ahead of time and said, hey, just so you know, we should all throw each other's names out a little bit to try to get suspicion off of us, that would have been one thing. I think that I think the others would have immediately shut him down. But I don't, you can't just go to the round table and start throwing it out there and have expectations that people aren't going to react to that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, Mike goes back to the airport mission and also says he thinks a traitor would put themselves on the death row list, which brings it back to Mary. Melissa brings it back to Kuzi, who defends herself by saying she talks for a living as a 911 operator and she isn't trained to lie. She's trained to save lives. She's playing logically, and the reason nobody has caught her in a lie is because she only knows how to operate in truth. And I'm just watching that going, damn, she's good. And then Mike basically says the same thing.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It wasn't even just what she was saying, it was the way she was delivering the speech in this really
Mm-hmm.
impassioned and authentic seeming way. I was very impressed by this.
Yes. So she continued and basically says you could find reasons for everyone to be a traitor. She names Kevin and Gurleen as two people she doesn't think are traitors, but if they were, here's why. And, she wraps up by saying she'll bring something up if she's confident in it. And I like the way she's doing it because, yes, we've seen it on every season. There are always reasons for some that you can point to that someone could be a traitor. Oh, they came in first to breakfast. They came in last to breakfast. They, when they wanted to jump into this car with that other person, they accidentally used the word murder. They fought too hard for the shield. They didn't fight hard enough for the shield. Just all of these things over, time have been used as reasons, rationalizations. And so Kuzi's absolutely right. And, she's also right in saying, yeah, if I'm confident, I'll bring it up, but I'm not just going to bring up random suspicions, which is what most faithful do. They take the most random things and they say that's, definitive proof.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, you've got to do something, don't you? But I think
Yes.
she was very convincing in this piece.
Yeah. So then Kevin turns things back to Mike and again says that the Mike he talks to is not the Mike playing the game. And it seems like Mike is reducing his own intelligence in the game to stay hidden. So again, Kevin with a dead on read. But should you have said that out loud? Or should you have
In
taken a lesson from Mike and done it yourself?
I've got to agree. In my notes here, I just said, Kevin, I love you. Please stop effing this up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. The Donna bit, though, next killed me,
Yes.
David.
Yes. So Donna says she's going to vote for someone on the death row list, even though Kuzi's like, you don't have to do that. You can vote for anyone. Um, she continues, and Gurleen echoes a lot of my thoughts by saying, go ahead, you can have the line. Do you have it written down?
I want to stab myself in the eye
Yeah.
whenever Donna talks. I fell in love with Gurleen this episode. Even, I mean, I think she comes for does she come for Melee or somebody else after this as well? She's just ruthless. Oh, that's right. Earlier in this banishment,
Yes.
she also says that whenever Melee talks, she just thinks about her dog.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that one. Yeah. That was
She's
another.
over them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can understand it, at least with Donna. I can understand it. Donna, I don't know. Donna's head is out there somewhere. I don't know where. And in fact, Donna rambles on until Kareen's like, okay, enough of this. We're cutting it off here. Is there, so you tell me this, because I don't know. Is there a specific time limit that you're aware of, or do they let things play out until they have played out, basically?
To my knowledge, there's not a specific time limit. They let you go on until they think they've got the content that they want and they need. And when they start getting bored of you, then they cut you off.
That would explain why they cut off at Donna. Yes. Um, all right. So it's time to reveal the votes. Mickey votes Kevin. Kuzi votes Kevin. Kevin is losing his mind. Mary votes Mike with an upside down vote. And then when people point it's upside down, she very forcefully turns it the other way. May votes Kevin. Trevon votes Kevin, continuing to show that he's Trevon. I will say if someone says flat out they don't trust you, yeah, then it does make sense to use Kevin's own strategy and vote that person out. But I don't think that's why Trevon is doing it. I think in the moment Trevon probably really does think he's a traitor.
I think Trayvon's a petty king, and honestly, fair call.
Kevin continues to get more and more pissed. There's one thing about Kevin that we are going to really miss, and that is his just I don't know how to describe it. It's like stage presence, like he, even when they talked about Dom being, his mouth dropped and the camera focused on him, and just everything about him is bigger than life.
Absolutely. He's clearly very charismatic, has great chemistry with the camera. He's
Mhm.
fun to watch.
Yes. So he is so pissed off that Karine like comes over to him to calm him down a little bit. Uh, he votes Mike. Gurleen votes Donna. I, I, I mean, I understand, why, but it's kind of pointless. Mike votes Kevin. Melissa votes Donna. Leroy votes Kevin, and so does Psychic Donna. Kevin, who I thought was the best player there, has been banished. He goes to the Circle of Truth and says he was a true faithful.
Oh, he looks so broken in this
Yes.
moment, David. And I was broken as well. I was distraught.
Yes, I was very sad. He was the star of my TikToks. He was, the star of the podcast. He just continues to be a star. So after he leaves, May wonders to the rest of the round table, why are we so bad at this game? And Mary says she doesn't know. And I say, good question, May. Good question. Kevin then told us he's going to regret that round table for a long time. And I can see why. He laid out too much of his actual strategy for all to see. And I'd say some, maybe most of them, as we've discussed, aren't smart enough to actually understand what he's saying, strategically smart enough. And some, I think it just rubbed them the wrong way. If I were doing so, I have been requested by a certain traitor from this season who is already out of the game, not to mention any names, even though there's only been one, to do a little bit of why blank lost here for for these players. And if I were doing my why blank lost rules, I would say Kevin schemed and plotted too much, and he didn't do enough pretending to be nice when it came to Trevon. He needed to have a better answer to what Trevon said, one that didn't involve attacking him. And you said it already. He shouldn't have been throwing out his allies' names like Kuzi and Leroy. So I don't know. What do you think? I know you've already, talked about how distraught you were, but beyond that, now is the time to let it all out.
Kevin was a real pleasure. And I agree that he sealed his fate here at the banishment. But I do think not being able to correctly read Kuzi and the fact that Kuzi was his traitor protector, not Mary, really threw off his entire strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if your strategy is stick close to the traitors, build a little posse of allies for banishment, by episode 6, you have to have worked out which one of your best friends is a traitor, and you cannot be throwing your other allies under the bus yet. So I think he needed to have that critical read.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because, we've heard him say in the past, like, that he was surprised that he hadn't been murdered yet. Okay, then you have to take that next step and say, why? And you look around and you say, I'm allies with these 3 other people here, and I haven't been murdered yet. Maybe there's a connection here. And so then it goes back to what you said, which is, in that case, even if you don't know which of those other 3, don't name any of them.
You've got to know it's one of you. You cannot be walking around behaving like Kevin and be safe from murder if one of your best friends is not a traitor. Your relationship with Mary is not tight enough. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be Gurleen, Kuzi, or Leroy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he even said he was building his relationship with Mary. He had barely talked to her up till then. And correct. So, yeah, it has to be one of the other ones. And it really makes the most sense to be the one that he made the alliance with on day one. After the roundtable, Gurleen is upset and feels betrayed by Kuzi, Leroy, and Mike. Kuzi says she trusted Kevin, and suddenly he threw her name out there. Gurleen feels blindsided, but Kuzi says she was the one who felt that way. Melissa tells Leroy they lost an amazing asset because he was calling shit out. So if she is still there, after the death row decision, they need to start, look at, okay, who was he calling out? To which I'm saying, oh, you mean like Leroy himself, who was one of the people that he named just before he was voted out?
Well, they agree here that their number one and two is
Mm-hmm.
Cuzzy and Mike. And they can't murder Leroy
Yes.
tonight. He's still going to be in the game. And the next time on, we see the names coming up. We see Cuzzy and Mike having a bit of a fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's going to go off. They could be misleading us. But I think no matter what, those two names are out there now.
I mean, everybody's name has to be out there by now. We're entering episode 7.
But we already saw the snowball for Cuzzy.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing. We don't go back to Traitors Tower, so we go to the previews, and like you said, there's this suggestion they could turn on each other. Just based on the few clips we saw, I think May gets caught in a lie or some sort of thing. It sounds like May says Kuzi's name, or says Kuzi said something to Mike, and then they both turn on May. I think May could be in some trouble here.
I think she could as well. She has been loud and at the forefront for too long, and we know we're only going to have the quiet dum-dums at the end. So, May, sorry.
Yeah. So I also think that Melissa will be the one who gets murdered from death row.
Yes. Who have we got? We've got.
I think it's just Melissa and Mary.
Mary's the other one.
Yes.
Oh, it's totally Melee. Yeah, Mary's name is out there and has steam.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Melissa. I think you're going. And then, yes, I think between May and Cuzzy, with maybe May losing tomorrow night, I can see that happening.
Yes. Yeah. And the other reason, was more of a production reason, I thought, for Melissa. If Melissa was still going to be there, there was no reason to show her discussion with Leroy at that moment.
Yeah.
But
there's no heat on her. No one's looking at her. There's no reason to keep her in the game for the Traitors.
Right. So overall, I still say, Trevon still obviously playing a terrible game. But it's going to be a terrible game that somehow is he a Quentin and an Andy? I mean, is he?
Trayvon's going to the end. Trayvon and Donna are going to go all the way. I think Mickey will stay in a long time as well, but eventually people will say...
I forgot about Mickey. See, I just forget Mickey is even there.
Yeah, Mickey refuses to talk strategy with anyone, but also no one's ever going to banish him. So at some point they will have to murder him. But I think the final, Donna and Trayvon definitely make it. And I think Mickey's in that final 5 as well.
Oh my God. What a set. What a group. It rivals your season there.
Nothing will rival my season.
True.
Okay, when it comes to that last final sprint, if we can call it that.
Yes, but I mean, I could just, I almost want to sit down with like your season's last faithful and kind of like draw lines to connect them to this season's probable last faithful. Because I think some of them are direct connections there.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, of course, all that happened in your season after the season actually ended, but because that was like, the pretend episode 9 or 10 or whatever it was. So, May, we've talked about her game too. I still think it's generally terrible, but it's picking up, and it's picking up just enough that I think it will attract attention. And Kuzi and Mike, we'll have to see. They've got more attention on them, but they're still basically running the game.
It's messy though. I actually
Yeah.
think Leroy is playing a really good game. I'm worried for him, but he's got solid
Mm-hmm.
allies. He's trusted. He's super tight with Cuzzy and not putting her name out there. I think Leroy is playing an underrated game, and it's not because I'm biased and he's very handsome. It's also because he's playing a good game.
It's also because I like that. What worries me about Leroy, I don't know if worries is the right word. We literally know nothing about his strategy. We have not heard him talk about it. We don't know, does he have any inkling that Kuzi is a traitor? Is he going to turn on her? Like when he knew Melissa B was a traitor, he came to her and said flat out, "You're a traitor and here are these reasons."
Well, I mean, with drawing more parallels between Kevin and myself, Kevin was hogging so much of the confessional count that we didn't really get to hear from a lot of other people.
True.
And I think now he's gone, we do have time for the others to shine.
That's true. That's true. And maybe that, will happen. And I do think, besides the fact that Kevin is a natural, I do think Traitors Canada tended to focus on the returning stars more. They wanted to get their money's worth from them,
Yes.
in episode 1, lots of Erica and then although
Mickey.
Yeah, who, what? I guess Gurleen is technically a returning, person too, but just not in the same level, I guess we'll call it.
No.
I don't even know. She was on Farming for Love. Did she find the seeds of love? I don't know the answer to that.
I did a bit of research. I don't think so. I think she made the hard decision to choose herself in the end.
Oh, no. All right. So that pretty much wraps up this episode. Do you have any other thoughts about all of this?
No, I hope we do get to see some traitor on traitor violence next episode. I want to see things get messy because I think that's what keeps the seasons interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to get Australia-fied. And I hope I love Cuzzy and Mike. They've been so fun to watch, but I'm rooting for their demise to save the season second half.
I'm still rooting for Kuzi. I still love Kuzi. I like Mike a lot too, but I just, there's so much I love about Kuzi and, just her whole personality, the way she's played it. I'm really hoping she wins. I'd be happy with a Mike win. I don't know. Leroy winning, I'd be okay with that.
You be careful what you say about my man, Leroy.
Any of the other faithfuls, they're going to need to show me something, in the near future first. And that's happened before. We'll see. I do want to, before we finish up, I want to let everyone know about more great stuff we have here on the Traitors podcast, both coming up and posted fairly recently. If you haven't heard it yet, Matthew was the first person anywhere to interview Blake from your season, Traitors Australia season 2. And without spoiling anything about where he finished up, we'll just say he was important to the outcome of the season. And the face that I am getting right now from Annabelle is pretty funny. We also posted the second in our new special series as Matthew and I are covering Survivor UK here on the Traitors. We know it's a little weird, but Matthew has never seen Survivor. I, of course, have covered the show in its many forms for over 23 years. So we're looking at it from those different viewpoints. Plus, of course, Matthew is in the UK, so he fills in details that I might not know there. The one we posted a couple days ago covers episodes 3 and 4. And I know you were watching that, Annabelle. Now, you didn't fall in love with that.
I've thrown in the towel. There was only so much more of Lee's face I could stomach, David. You're a stronger person than I am, and I will now be digesting the UK via your podcasts.
So if I'm stronger, that means I can stay. That's what it means, right? Because
you are a man, so you
yes,
are stronger.
yes. And anyone who doesn't get what we're talking about, you're going to have to go either watch Survivor UK or just listen to our podcast because we recap it. You really don't even need to watch. You could just listen to the recap. Coming up, we still have more great guests for the coming weeks, including one of the winners of the New Zealand season in a few weeks. And actually, he was one of the people I was talking about as the season was going on. I was like, I don't see it. And then he, really sprang to life. I mean, he was a character the whole way through. But other than that, Annabelle, where can everyone find you?
Everyone can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Annabelle CE. You can also find me over on the podcast Babes on the Brink, where with the lovely Chili Philly from Australian Survivor, we are also talking about the Traitors Canada, getting a little bit silly with it, rating Kareen's outfits and who we're gay for this week. And over on Silent Podcasts with the lovely Sarah Carradine, I am talking about the Amazing Race Australia Celebrity Edition, which has been lots of fun as well. I've had the best time with you, David. It was so fun to nerd out on the strategy.
Yes, it was great. I'm actually, Sarah is going to be coming on here as a guest in a week or two. We haven't quite got the schedule. I'm trying to get the pieces together, but so yeah. And I've been watching Amazing Race Australia. This is the first season of Amazing Race Australia that I've watched, perhaps because King George was on it. But no spoilers. But even if he were to leave at some point, there are still other people that I'm having fun watching, like the Wiggles. Even though the funny thing is, when my kids were little and watching the Wiggles, she wasn't even there yet. They were just four guys when my kids were watching it. And so I mentioned it to them. I'm like, oh, the Wiggles, the first Wiggles woman is on there. And their response was, Wiggles have a woman? So yeah.
We love.
Yeah.
As long as you also hate Darren, we can still be friends.
Which one's Darren?
The awful one. The one having a bad time.
The one with his nephew?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't hate him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Most of the people I didn't like. I'm not fans of the muscleheads. I've wanted them to go many times, but then they'll just out of nowhere do nice things, like try to talk down the fighting between the mom and the son, and so it's like, I don't like you because you're muscleheads, and then you do something nice. So yeah.
You know me, David, I'm a muscle apologist.
Yeah. So I'm actually, and I don't know if it's because of, some of the people on there or because it's twice a week and I've gotten into it more or whatever, but don't tell anyone, but I'm enjoying it more than Amazing Race US right now. So
secret safe with me.
Yeah, that's just between us. Nobody else is listening, so nobody will ever tell. But all right. Well, with that, it is time to finish the Traitor game. Ooh. Annabelle, did you remember to lie to me?
Okay, I had a lie prepared the whole way through and I couldn't find a place to sandwich it in. And then I also completely forgot again that I was supposed to be looking for a lie from you. But I'll tell you what I think the lie is, that every single time we have had people put up for the put on trial, that we've always had a traitor in there. I'm pretty sure they didn't do that in the UK version. Is that what you were lying about?
Well, if that is true, then it was a mistake, not a lie.
Oh, Oh, okay. All
But
right.
if we want to research that, I will give you credit for it. No, my lie was I sandwiched it in there in the cell phone stuff. American Idol season 9, Joanna Pacitti was not disqualified because of a cell phone. She was disqualified because producers found out she had previously had a record deal and had even joined Nick Lachey as his opening act on tour at one point. So,
Oh, wow.
yes. So I was looking, I was like, oh, let's get an American Idol person in there because I know about the other two. But in America, so I searched American Idol, cheating or scandals. And one of them that I was going to use was someone who I can't remember they really did. Now I had it in there, and it was what they really did was I don't know something else. But then as I read further, like his life really went downhill fast after he got kicked out. Like a month later or 2 months later, he killed someone in a drunk driving incident and
Oh
all
my
that. I was
God.
like, okay, I'm not going to use that as part of a joke lie here. Um, but
This is
yeah.
why I'm a faithful and you're a great traitor. I can't lie to save myself, and you are brilliant, David.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm a great liar. So what was your lie going to be?
I was going to lie about us having to give the shields to production straight away and us only
Mm.
being allowed to bring them into breakfast. I don't know if that's a lie. I think it is a lie. But I thought you'd buy it.
I probably would have because I don't know. So you weren't allowed to. So no one wore one into breakfast in
You
your
could wear
season?
it into breakfast, but I'm just saying, like, as
Oh,
soon as you found the shield, you had to hand
mhm.
it over to production. They didn't give it back to you till the next day.
Okay. So kind of like the torches in Survivor, where it looks
Yeah.
like they're carrying them back and forth, but really, no, they get them and take them and everything.
But I could accidentally be telling the truth with that one. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
And
that's kind of
also,
like
I didn't find.
I may have accidentally lied. So if I had to guess, I was going to guess your that you when you said you researched Gerline, I was like, oh, that sounds like something she threw in at the end there.
Oh no, I did.
All right, well, there we have it, episode 6 of the Traitors Canada. If you, excuse me, want to reach out to me to let me know what you think, I am all over social media and reality TV podcasting. I podcast about both Survivor and U.S. Big Brother for another week or so on the Rob Has a Podcast network, with the name of the show being Why Blank Lost, and I use those rules that I talked about. You could find all my various accounts through my link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in the URL. Or you could find me on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky is at David Bloomberg, and on the video platforms TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. Speaking of those video platforms, I post 3 or 4 reality TV short videos on all of those sites every day. Right now, mostly US Big Brother, though that's trailing off, and Survivor. But of course, I've posted them for the Traitors Canada and for Survivor UK. I have one ready to go. It'll probably be posted before this podcast is even out on this, the most recent episode, and have a couple more. As I mentioned earlier, Kevin was the star of these for his strategy for a while. Obviously, that will change. And besides that, people should be sure to check out the accounts for this podcast overall. You can find us on Instagram as at the Traidar Podcast and on Twitter as at the Traidar Pod. You can also email the Traidar Podcast at gmail.com. And if you'd like to help support the cost of publishing this podcast, you can drop Matthew a few bucks or whatever they are in Canada or, Australia. I don't know. At coffee.com. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. I will be right back here again next week. But of course, I'll be back with Matthew sooner than that. And I'll be back in other places even sooner than that. So tune in here, tune in and listen to what Annabelle has to say about all those different shows, and reach out in social media in the meantime. We will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.